Hey there, it's Joseph, and welcome back to the channel dedicated to San Miguel de Allende's secrets. And today we're going to talk about a chapel that was hiding in plain sight right here in Central. As always, if you need additional information in the descriptive box below, or links to various websites, including one out to Amazon.com that offers all the best-selling books in the San Miguel de Allende Secrets series of books for sale. There's an old adage that the best place to hide is often in plain sight. This certainly holds true for one of the most ancient chapels in the middle of San Miguel de Allende. La Palmita is one of our 4 oldest neighborhoods and was originally set aside, marked by crosses for the indigenous to settle in. The Spanish settled down the hill in Centro. Back during the colonial era of San Miguel de Allende, La Palmita was dotted with chapels on the hillside. Today, some of those chapels have been repurposed into storage sheds, pool houses, and the like, still featuring their interior frescoes painted by long-ago residents. Others can't even be seen without a drone, hidden behind buildings and walls. Still, I was surprised to find a new, well, to me, chapel on one of our most used and picturesque streets in town, Cruz de Pueblo. Cruz de Pueblo is a pedestrian-only street with staircases that zigzag back and forth, like Lombard Street in San Francisco. The top area has been remodeled during the pandemic to feature sitting areas and a stage in the shadow of the cross atop the mountain, once marking a boundary for La Palmita. The ancient Toltecs believed each mountain had its own deity, so they were inclined to build pyramids on local mountaintops. Much later, the Spaniards arrived, taking that tradition and using a mountaintop spirituality to be marked by a cross instead. Before the condos loomed over the cross, it was my favorite spot to have a romantic picnic while the sun set over town, the lake, and the mountains around Guanajuato. About halfway up the stairs, behind a greenhouse, I noticed the rooftop of a 1700s chapel recently. Going to explore, I found the chapel was in remarkably good shape, except for some broken windows in the ceiling. The chapel door was ajar, and though largely blocked by piles of lumber stored there, you can peek around the door to see what could be indigenous frescoes in the distance. However, someone in the late 60s or early 70s got really stoned and painted Jesus and some angels whose hairstyles would seamlessly fit into the Partridge Family bus. Nearby is the largest Calvario I've ever seen in the area. Calvarios are outside shrines the indigenous would place flowers and candles in to worship their ancestors before going into the adjacent chapel to celebrate the new faith. The Calvario here features murals with waterfalls and indigenous dancing. They don't look old enough to be original, but they were very nicely done. The chapel, like many in Pila Seca, is completely landlocked and hasn't been active in some time. The church, like with a condo, owns the interior while the government owns the outside. If masses are no longer held in the chapel, the church has no interest in the building and will, in fact, decommission it, removing blessings formerly placed on the site. The government won't maintain a chapel the church isn't using. Speaking with neighbors whose homes back to the chapel, some had never visited the chapel and none knew the name or history. Trying to research the name and history was a struggle, as very few even know of the chapel. Walking up or down the steps, one eyes the steps, not the surrounding buildings. Even my pals that grew up there, or the local church offices, could not offer any insight. Given the chapel was beside the path leading up to the Sacred Cross, the name of the chapel was likely the Sacred Cross, and part of a then hacienda used for orchards or grazing. The Sacred Cross is one of the top 3 most common chapel names in the area. The other common names are the Virgin of Solitude, patroness for weavers that worked in the area, and St. Isidore, patron of farmers who also worked in the area. If you happen to know any more of the history of this lovely chapel, smack in the middle of town, please contact me. Often with these old chapels, their history disappears over the centuries of disuse as they turn into picturesque ruins. Feel free to click the subscribe button below and you'll get notifications all month long